Hey there team, Michael Pure with you here, also known as Oz, and welcome back to another episode of Thoughts with Oz, the secondary part of the Words with Oz podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed last week's. I'm going to try and make them a little bit shorter this week, but the same theme, the same idea. Give you guys that idea, some thoughts, some inspiration, some ideas on making your world a better place, inspiring your world to be more ambitious and more fulfilling. Something that has come up for me a lot this last week with clients and people that I'm speaking to, and even on this week's podcast with Andrew, is the idea of the fear of failure. It's not new, it's something we've all experienced, and we've all seen it in some way. And I don't intend to come at it from the idea that I normally come at it. I'm not going to speak about, dealing with fears and acting with courage and facing your fear of failure. I'm not going to come at it from that point, not today. Today I want to talk about encouraging an environment that encourages failure. I want to work out a way, I want us to find a way to foster a place where failure is a good thing. Not quitting, not giving up, not making so many failures that we just don't get anywhere, but failing, learning and growing. The dead ends, the wrong decisions, all those things that we do that get us on the way to becoming our best self. How can we create an environment where our children, where us, where our employees, where the people around us feel like failure is okay? Because at the moment they don't. If you look around and you speak to people, everyone has this fear that they're going to fail. Everyone has the fear of the judgment that comes from failing, and there shouldn't be any judgment because all successful people know you've got to fail. You have to hit the ground, you have to scrape your knees, you have to drag your knuckles in the dirt, you have to get it wrong so that you can learn, so that you can get it right, and so that you can grow. So how do we develop this place? How do we create this place where failing is okay? To my knowledge, we're only born with two fears. The first one is the fear of falling, and the second is the fear of loud noises. Everything else we're taught. So a fear of failing is something that we're taught. And I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with the idea of children, when we're children. And for me, I think our parents teach us about the fear of failure. Whether they're trying to protect you, whether they're trying to guide you in the right way, whether they're trying to encourage success too much, whatever the case may be, for some reason, when we're children, we learn this fear of failure, and there's only one place that can come from, and that's the people that teach us how to grow up. Majority of the time, that's our parents. And I want to start there because we need to teach children to have a healthy relationship with failing. And I know for me, failing was not okay as a kid. In my household, it was about being perfect. Majority of this area of failure, majority of this area of resilience, of keeping on going, was something that my old man taught. And whilst I appreciate every lesson I received from him, when I think about this idea of failure, I'm not sure he went about it the best possible way. He demanded to be perfect, and that's not how the world works. The world works by trying, failing, learning and growing. I even remember this one particular time I was learning how to play tennis, or at least learning how to hit a tennis shot. And we had this, it was young enough, I must have been 7, 8 or 9, we were still living on a compound. Sorry, we weren't living on a compound. We were living in the country, and the property had this massive compound. And I remember playing tennis with my old man on the compound, and he decided that we needed to hit 100 shots without making a mistake. So 100 lobs in the air, 100 volleys without making a mistake. And I still remember it, but the thing I remember about it was we'd restart every time we failed. We restart, I'd get to 10, I'd stuff up, we'd restart. I'd get to 50, I'd stuff up, we'd restart. I'd get to 90, I'd start getting nervous, I'd stuff up, and we'd restart. And whilst you could look at this and think, what a great way to teach that resilience, the problem is that I was afraid of the failure. I wasn't learning from failing and going again and keeping on going. We didn't celebrate the right thing, I don't think, to recognize what was so key about that lesson, in that it's okay to fail. If I'd done it and got to 100 straight away, I feel like that would have been celebrated. but what we needed to talk about, what we needed to find, what we needed to celebrate with those failures. So from the outset, it might look like this is a great way to teach that perseverance and resilience and that never give up attitude. But for me, that seeking of perfection, I think there's a better way to go about it. And as a child in this story, I felt like I was being punished if I'd stuffed up. I felt like the failures were the things we were trying to avoid. And that's what I learned from it. I didn't learn the rest. You know, you could look at that story and think, oh, you just took it the wrong way. Well, that's fine, but the communication is the result that you get. And the result that I got was to avoid failure and seek perfection, which I just don't think works. We all know as adults, it just doesn't work. You've got to fail. You've got to be denied. You've got to do the wrong thing. You've got to make mistakes, and you've got to learn from them. And that's the only way and the only pathway and the only step towards getting success. I tell you, my memories from now, it's not about how well I felt and the joy I got from hitting 100 shots. My memories now are how bad I felt when I stuffed up one of the shots. So with our children, how often do we ask them to fail? You know, when you get to the end of the day and you're having dinner with your kids, or maybe there's children in your family or the youth that are around you, whatever the case may be, how often do you get to the end of the day and ask them, what did you fail at today? How often do you ask them, what did you succeed at? You know, are you happy for them to come home and say, I got 40% on my spelling test? Is that okay in your household? Because that means they can learn and they can grow from there. Is it okay in your household for them to stuff up at the gym? Is it okay in your household for them to suck at dance or whatever the co-curricular activity is they're doing after school? Is that okay? Or are they afraid to come and tell you how much they are stuffing up? Because I think we need to create that environment that encourages the failure. The one that asks, what did you fail at today? What did you learn? Celebrate that behavior and then grow from there. I'm not talking about encouraging mediocrity, so don't take me down the wrong path. Don't put my words in my mouth where I'm trying to say that it's okay to not be good at something. I'm not suggesting that mediocrity is okay. I'm not suggesting that you should aim at getting things wrong. What I'm suggesting is that you should aim so high and try so hard that you fail so that you can learn and grow, because that is the only way to reach higher levels of success. And when we get to become adults, it's that unconscious patterns that we learn as children that create our relationship with failure. So whatever you are teaching your children right now, or the children in your life right now around failure, that is what they're going to be when they're older. They're the patterns that they're going to be someone's going to be sitting there like I am, looking into their own video camera, telling you about the patterns that they're trying to break around failure, because we gave them an unhealthy relationship with it. And that's what we've got to work on. What is the environment saying for you, your children, and the people around you about failure? What is the attitude that you bring to failure at work and at home and so on? Do you practice failing? Is it okay to fail? Do you understand, or do you act in a way that shows that failure is not fatal or final? The only thing that's fatal or final is when you quit and you give up. Everything else about failure is a good thing and leads you to success. And how about in your adult life? How do you act? How do you show that failure is a good thing? Are you a manager or a business owner, or are you on a social sporting team? And what is your position in that team? And how do you act in a way that shows that failure is an okay thing? Failing, learning, and going again. Think back to the last staff meeting that you were a part of. Did you guys celebrate the wins? Or did you acknowledge all the failures on the way to those wins that mattered the most? Because the failures that you learned from that led to the wins that matters. It's not the big sale that you got, the one big account that came in that matters. It's the fact that you failed 100 times on the way to that big account. They're the things that need to be celebrated, because that's where the work is and that's where the key was. And we need to have a healthy relationship with those failures. If we consistently highlight the benefits of the result, we are teaching the wrong thing around failure. We are teaching our minds to avoid failure, and that's not the key. We need more failure, and we need more learning from it. I'm often reminded of Teddy Roosevelt's quote about critics and judgment. And I think that's key here in this idea of failure. And it's not because it was a great quote, and it's not because it sounded well, it rolled off the tongue. It's too long a quote, really. But God, it resonates with people, and people understand it. It is not about the person who sits back and judges. I'm not going to quote him. You can look it up, Teddy Roosevelt. I might even bring it on the screen in the video. It's the person that steps up and takes action that matters. The person who gets their knuckles dirty, who grazes their knees, who sweats, who has the battle scars, who gets involved. They're the person who in 100 years we'll all be quoting. We're not going to quote the person that judges them and sits back and does nothing. And that's what matters, because people are avoiding failure for fear of being judged by the rest of us. And it's the people that can act without that fear of judgment that are going to go and get failures and learn and grow and have the massive successes. And we need to encourage that more in our society. One of the ways that I love to do this, and I'll just give you one exercise as we close up for this Thoughts with Oz, but one of the ways that I love to do this is an idea, I call it the 90 no's. And all the people that get to the end of my coaching programs would have done this and understand this, but I'll go through it now with you. And I want you to think about 21 days. 3 weeks, 5 no's per day. So imagine a grid, 21 across, 5 down. I know that's 105, but trust me, you're never going to get 105. Maybe you'll get to 90. I've only ever had 2 people who have really successfully, day after day, got more than 5 no's. But I want you to come up with a goal that you want to achieve, and I want you for the next 21 days to try and get 5 failures. You won't reach 90 before you achieve your goal. And it should be celebrated, and it should be seen as successful that you get 5 no's that day. Because the more no's, the closer we are to succeeding. So have a look at that idea. 21 days, 5 no's a day, and see if you can get there. See how many failures you can bring into your life, because it's the actions that we do every day that people see. It's not the words that we use. It's not me telling you to do this. It's whether or not I go out tomorrow and get 5 failures. That's what matters. That's how we're going to change our environment around failure and get rid of this fear, shake this fear of failing. If we truly want to live our most ambitious and successful lives, and more than that, if we want our loved ones, if we want our children, if we want the future to live their most successful and ambitious lives, we've got to change this environment around failure. Failure should not be feared. Failure should be found and celebrated. We have to spend our time changing this idea. And it can only happen if we start encouraging failure and learning and growing. So seek out failure this week. Hope you guys have enjoyed these words. And every day ask yourself, what have I